Hey everyone, I'm going to take a few minutes to explain what you need to do to complete week 3 assignment 1 on fragments and run-ons. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that in order to be successful on this assignment, you probably want to go through the lessons in week 3 under the grammar and mechanics lesson, the mini lessons on sentence fragments and run-on sentences and comma places. At least look over the handouts. If either handout seems confusing in any way, then go ahead and watch the video that is above the handout in that mini lesson. These two particular are really common errors in student writing, and so it's a really good idea to make sure that you understand both of these issues. So at least look over the handouts, maybe watch the videos before you try doing this assignment. This assignment will be completed as a text submission. So you're going to be typing your answers right in the text box, but the easiest way to complete the assignment in the text box is to copy and paste everything into the text box. That way everything is right there in the text box and you just mark your answers. If you have issues with copying and pasting, especially depending on the type of device you're using to complete your homework, you can simply number your answers in the text box and provide your responses that way. You'll have to do a little extra typing this time around because we're dealing with sentences and correcting them. But it is, if that's how you need to complete it, that's fine. But if you're able to copy and paste the whole assignment into the text box, it just makes it a little bit easier, to mark your answers. But for this assignment, there's two parts. Part 1 is on sentence fragments. What you're going to see in part 1 are 3 small paragraphs. In each paragraph, there is a sentence fragment. So it's a sentence that looks like a sentence, is trying to act like a sentence, but for one reason or another, it's not actually a sentence. It is incomplete in some way. It is a fragment. Your job is two things. First, identify the sentence fragment. Highlight it, underline it, somehow indicate which one you think is the sentence fragment in that group. Your second job is to then fix it. Now, there are no other errors in that group, in that little paragraph. The only thing you need to be worried about is finding the fragment and fixing it. Everything else is fine. Everything else is correct. Okay? There is an example box at the start of part 1, and it shows you kind of what you're supposed to do. So our example here says, an electric eel can produce a shock of over 600 volts, more than enough power to kill a full-grown human. The eel uses this power as radar to find live food. Step 1 is to identify the fragment. Highlight it or underline it. I have highlighted the second sentence in this group. More than enough power to kill a full-grown human. That is the sentence fragment in that set. It is the sentence that looks like a sentence, is trying to act like a sentence, but it is not a complete sentence. It's a fragment. It's just a phrase. So step 2 then is to make the correction. And you can see how I've done that. An electric eel can produce a shock of over 600 volts, comma, more than enough power to kill a full-grown human. The eel uses this power as radar to find live food. If you go back to the lesson on sentence fragments, you'll see that oftentimes when we end up with a sentence fragment, it's because that fragment was supposed to be connected to another sentence, a complete sentence. And it's typically either the sentence right before it or the sentence right after it. And that happens to be the case here. That fragment, more than enough power to kill a full-grown human, was supposed to be connected to the first sentence. But either in our haste of typing, or maybe we typed that first sentence and then had an additional thought and we just tacked it on, but incorrectly, all you have to do is just connect it to the sentence it goes with. It's a pretty easy fix most of the time. And that happens to be the case here. But you're going to want to do that same thing in the 3 groups of sentences there in part 1. Identify the fragment first. There's only one in each set. And then fix it. It's the only thing that needs to be fixed in each set. Don't waste your time looking for other errors. There are none. Just find the fragment, identify it, highlight it or underline it, and then fix it. Okay? Part 2 of this assignment is on run-on sentences and comma splices. This is the most common error in student writing. So definitely look over that handout, and if you are thinking that you are guilty of having a lot of run-ons in your sentences, read through the handout even more closely. If you don't know what a comma splice is, when you hear me say that right now, if you don't know what a comma splice is, definitely go back and at least look at that handout. Probably go ahead and watch the video, because it is the most common error. If you feel like you're ready, then you'll come back to part 2 here, and basically what we have is 7 items, 7 groups of sentences, and in each one there is a run-on or a comma splice. Your job is to find it and fix it. So you can see I have 2 different examples here at the top of part 2. Our first example, the original sentence says, "Fear can prevent a person from acting. Hate, on the other hand, will often cause action." Our job is to figure out where the problem is. Fear can prevent a person from acting. Hate, on the other hand, will often cause action. Those are our 2 sentences. Fear can prevent a person from acting. Hate, on the other hand, will often cause action. So when we're looking there, we can see that there's nothing separating those 2 sentences. That is a traditional run-on sentence, when the first one literally runs right into the second one, with nothing separating them. So we have to separate them correctly. If you go back to the lesson, there are several ways that we can correct this type of error. We have a conjunctive adverb here, on the other hand, so I've chosen to use a semicolon to separate these 2 complete sentences. Fear can prevent a person from acting, semicolon. Hate, on the other hand, will often cause action. Remember, a semicolon can be used when you have a complete sentence on each side of it. It connects those 2 sentences and lets them remain as one. You do not want to simply put a comma between those 2 sentences, because that gives us a comma splice, which is still an error. It's just a special type of run-on sentence, which we see in the next example. So in this example, the original sentence says, "I got a speeding ticket last week. The cost of my insurance will probably go up." We look there and we see the comma in the middle. I got a speeding ticket last week. That's our first sentence. The cost of my insurance will probably go up. That's our second sentence. We have a comma by itself separating those 2 complete sentences, and that is wrong. That is a comma splice. It still needs to be fixed. Again, referring back to the lesson, there are several ways to fix it. In this case, I've decided to use a coordinating conjunction along with that comma. I got a speeding ticket last week, comma, so the cost of my insurance will probably go up. Now it's fine that the comma is there, because the comma is not there by itself. It has that coordinating conjunction to go with it. Right? So your job in the next 7 items is to figure out where the problem is, Where does the first sentence end? Where does the second sentence begin? Fix the run-on or comma splice. Okay? Do your best. But really do your best. Because again, this is one of the most common errors in student writing. I'm going to be looking for them when I grade your formal writing assignments later in the quarter, and your final exam essay at the very end. So the more familiar you become with these now, the more practice you get at them now, the more likely you are to recognize them in your own writing when you proofread before you submit your final copies. But at the very least, if you get my feedback, returned, and I've marked comma splices, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I know what those are. I remember how to fix them. Let me do that. So at least just start familiarizing yourself with these errors and how to fix them. And this is your chance to practice. Okay? So it's due Sunday at 11:59. Try your best. Go back to those lessons and at least look at the handouts. Possibly watch the accompanying videos, especially for run-ons and comma splices. And if you have any additional questions or you want some more clarification on any of this, please reach out and let me know, okay?